Welcome to Open Minds. I'm your host, Christopher Balkrin, and trust me, folks, I want to get away from the pro-Palestinian encampments at McGill University, University of Toronto, Columbia, UCLA, etc. Trust me, there's a lot more going on in the world, but these are very important to cover because something very interesting happened today in Quebec. You see, McGill filed an injunction against the protesters. You know what? Let me share with you a video to describe this because it'll do a much better job than I can.
Lawyers from McGill argued that the encampment has become an unsanitary fire hazard that poses a danger to its campus and community and must be dismantled. Since the end of April, these protesters have called the McGill campus their home. University lawyers say there are now at least 115 tents and 150 individuals on site. In court documents, the university says the encampment is tantamount to a small village. It includes areas such as laundry, toilets, a cafeteria, clothing store, first aid, a library, and a press room. In a lengthy affidavit, lawyers say the university had tried negotiating with the occupants to no avail. They're worried the encampment poses a fire hazard. McGill is also concerned the situation could get dangerous. They say the encampment has brought counter-protesters, creating a potentially volatile situation. Last week, more than 100 police officers were on standby monitoring protesters. But lawyers for the protesters argued the injunction was unnecessary. They say the protesters are peaceful and it's their right.
We have affidavits that show that this demonstration is completely peaceful. It's not permanent. We will not have a permanent encampment at McGill.
The defendants argued there was no urgency to the situation. They said counter-protesters last week worked with police and there were no issues. The protesters say there are Jews and Palestinians alike camping side by side, and they should be respected. They also blame McGill for any sanitation issues.
And every time we brought them in, McGill blocked the delivery of portable toilets to the encampment. And then they come around in their injunction and saying, well, there's no toilet facilities. So that's hypocrisy. They sabotage the sanitation situation deliberately.
The hearing will continue Tuesday morning. And this.
Okay, so before we get to the update and what the Superior Court ruled, isn't that wild? I mean, am I the only one who's just amazed by the fact that universities are literally providing sanitation porta potties to protesters who are protesting the university? It just boggles my mind. I can't imagine, and I don't know if this happened, I don't think it did, that the federal government of Canada went out in the middle of February to the Freedom Convoy to say, hey, do you need some blankets? Do you need some toilets? Do you need some, hot chocolate, some Tim Hortons? Don't worry, we got that. We know you're protesting the COVID-19 policies that we are enacting on the population, but don't worry, we'll get you some blankets. You know what? We'll get you some bouncy castles. We'll get you everything you need. Make sure that you're okay when you're camping out here against our policies. But when it comes to universities, is there an expectation that the fencing and the porta potties and electricity in some cases, I don't know, will this be provided to the students who are protesting the university? It's not like they're protesting something more abstract. They're calling for the universities to divest from companies who don't denounce the genocide in Gaza undertaken by the Israel government. I just find that odd. Am I the only one? Can someone explain what universe that exists where the company, the organization you're protesting provides the protesters with what they need? Anyways, it's besides the point. It's besides the point because McGill University files this injunction citing health and safety risks, citing the fact that there is convocation around the corner. There's the possibility for counter-protests. It's just not a healthy, safe environment. Well, the Quebec Superior Court ruled today that no serious or violent incidents have occurred since the protest began on April 27th, 2024. The plaintiffs, the university, cited a confrontation that happened on May 2nd, but the court said, well, that was a confrontation, but it was peaceful due to police intervention. So the security risks were unsubstantiated by evidence. There was no actual threat. And then the convocation ceremony, well, that can easily be moved. So the courts actually rejected the injunction request from McGill University, and plaintiffs must amend their request within 10 days to strike out certain sections, and then costs are to follow. So very interesting there that the Superior Court in Quebec ruled that the injunction wasn't what the plaintiffs said it was. There was no health and safety risk. Things have been very peaceful. I guess McGill has to provide the sanitation for the protesters, and it just gets me questioning what's happening here. And maybe I'm ignorant, so please forgive me for my ignorance, but are we setting a standard for protests? Remember, this protest isn't about protesting what's happening in Palestine by the Israeli government. That's not what this protest is about. This protest, much like the one in Toronto, UCLA, and others, is about the university divesting from companies who are complicit in the, quote, genocide in Gaza and the West Bank. That's precisely what these protests are about. It's about university policy and divesting from companies that are complicit, as well as ending partnerships with Israeli educational institutions as well. Right? So again, this is not about protesting what the federal government is or is not doing in Gaza, in Palestine, in Israel. This is precisely about university policy. And so again, I think the ideas that have been put forward for this, the universities aren't going to agree to that, I don't think. And really, I think what's going to happen is this is a waiting game. Interesting that the lawyer said that this is not a permanent encampment. But, with the warmer weather, it's going to probably be there throughout the spring, summer, and into the fall. And maybe the university is just waiting these students out because eventually it'll change. The winds of change will change, and people will go back to classes and they'll have other things to do. So maybe this is a waiting game. But the reality is it is causing conflict on some level, whether we'd like to admit that or not. And it is causing people to kind of question what's really going on. I mentioned this in previous videos about the pathological altruism of students. And, again, so committed to a moral cause, not reflective of the negative consequences. And again, it's a perfect example. I shared yesterday what happened in UCLA as well. Wild stuff that happened in UCLA. I'm hopeful that McGill and University of Toronto doesn't get to that level. But it makes you question, why is this happening at certain universities and it's not happening at other universities? Anyways, this is a very interesting time. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and let me know what you think about Quebec Superior Court's ruling and whether or not you agree. Thanks so much, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next one.